excited to welcome Brian Sloan to the podcast. Brian is a novelist, playwright, screenwriter, and director. His acclaimed books include 2005's A Really Nice Prom Mess and 2006's A Tale of Two Summers. He also wrote and directed 2005's WTC View, which starred Michael Urie in the film version. Brian's latest project is the pilot for West 40s, which premiered on YouTube in middle July. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We loved West 40s. We reviewed it the week after it dropped on YouTube. And it was so great to see this comedy about 40-somethings in the West 40s. After our time in New York, we know that area very well. So it was kind of a little visit back home, too. What was the inspiration for West 40s?
Well, it really started because Mark Sam Rosenthal, who is my writing partner and co-creator on this project, was living in the neighborhood. He had been living there for a number of years, and we had already started working together as writing partners. We had done another TV show, which was more of like a drama. And then after that one, we did a pilot for this other show, which didn't really get picked up. So then we started thinking about what else we wanted to do. And we felt like we wanted to do something that was more reflective of us and kind of our friendship and our sense of humor, and something that was kind of more comic. I mean, we crack each other up a lot when we're hanging out. And I think, that was sort of the source of the very vague initial concept. And then he was living in the neighborhood and had just turned 40. And he was like, hey, we could call it West 40s. And that's sort of where the idea kind of came out of, really, because of his living in that neighborhood. And I knew the neighborhood well because I had a number of friends who lived there over the years. I worked in that neighborhood a lot on various films and freelance jobs. So yeah, it was an area that I was really familiar with, probably outside of the area where I was living, which was the West Village. That was probably the area of town I was most familiar with because, I would go up there for work. And also, of course, it's where all the Broadway shows are. So I would see a few of those every now and then. So yeah, that world was familiar to me too. And so, yeah, we just started talking about a show set in the neighborhood about guys in their 40s. And it took a while for us to kind of figure out exactly what it would be. But, the more we talked about it, the more we decided or realized like it just should be a comedy really about aging, as opposed to, I feel like when this subject is dealt with, gay men in their 40s, it's often dealt with in a much more tragic or kind of like woe is me sort of way. And we really wanted to come at it from a funnier perspective, realistic, because there are challenges about being in your 40s and being gay and living in Midtown Manhattan. But, we just wanted to find the humor in those situations. And that's sort of where the real concept for the show kind of took hold.
How did you decide on the character types to populate with? Because you certainly cut across a number with the friend group that's in place there.
Oh, yeah. We definitely, decided we wanted to have like a pretty diverse group of friends. And again, reflective of our friends in a way, and so we just started thinking about, kind of people we knew and started combining ideas about that. And, that actually took a while for us to figure out who all these characters were going to be. I think the first one that we were pretty clear on was TJ, who is the character that Mark Sam plays in the show. Character, loosely inspired by him, but also kind of like, different than him in other respects too, which we'll see as the show develops. But I think that was sort of a little bit of a starting point. And then we really just started, thinking about other, types that we wanted represented in the show. Like we both have friends who are, kind of in long-term committed relationships. So we like that idea of having one character is really in a long-term committed relationship, and that's Jeff Hiller's character in the show. and how that would kind of play out as part of the series. Then we talked about this kind of daddy phenomenon, which, this idea of somebody who in their 20s is maybe not considered like super attractive but doesn't really hit their stride like until they turn 40 and kind of become the quote unquote daddy type. And that's where we came up with the idea for Dante's character. So yeah, we spent a lot of time, probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, I think, just talking about these different characters and who they would be and how they would kind of like interact with each other and know each other. So yeah, that's sort of where that's the process that, we came up with these 5 guys. And I know one thing we talked about in that process was like, it can't be 4, because if it's 4, then they'll compare the show to Sex and the City, and we didn't want that. So we have 5. So no comparisons can be had, right?
That's funny. I had not considered that the number of people was important. If anything, I kind of likened it, for better or worse, to, what the show Friends might look like if those characters had aged up into their 40s.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I think we definitely talked about that show a lot when we were thinking about putting this together. I think another influence for us actually was a show on Comedy Central where Mark Sam works, a show, Broad City, which is such a very New York kind of show. And I feel like they use New York very brilliantly in that show in terms of some of the storylines, and the sense of humor in that show is really kind of wacky and a little off kilter. And we like that idea as well. So yeah, we definitely, we definitely talked about shows we liked, and started thinking about how we can kind of create our own show that sort of is in that vein. Another show, which was actually a digital show like ours, was The Outs. Have you ever seen The Outs?
I have not.
It's Adam Goldman's show, which is about a group of guys who are more in their 20s, but it's also just very well made, very well written. Actually, the writing on that show is fantastic, and the characters are just really, really vivid. It's just a really strong show. It's a little bit more. There's definitely humor in that show, but it's more on the drama side. There's a relationship at the core of it, of the first season, and really the second season too. So yeah, those were some of the shows we were, talking about and we were fans of. So that definitely was kind of part of our process too.
Mm-hmm. Now, currently, you've only made the pilot, I understand, which was helped with the Kickstarter that happened.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are you exploring to help get this to series to continue it?
Well, we decided to kind of put it out there on YouTube to sort of see, people's reaction to it, and really start building an audience for the show, so that we can, find either some sort of a financing deal with investors, or kind of a production company who might want to partner with us to make the rest of the series. Because we did the pilot was done very independently. We did a Kickstarter, and then we found a couple additional investors outside of the Kickstarter who just really loved this idea. So now we're kind of looking for more of that, and a production company, and Netflix can give us a call if they want. I can give you my number right now, and they can just give me a ring. Whatever works. We're open to different things. So
we've seen any number of kind of configurations with some of the creators we've had on the show. We've seen the full Kickstarter route, where they fund their entire 6 or 7 episode season that way, and folks that kind of kickstart at the end to get post-production done, to folks who just do the old-fashioned raise the money and then shoot the show and make sure they've got distribution ahead of time. It seems like there's a lot of ways to do it, and although none of them seem that easy.
Yeah, I think the key is really kind of just putting it out there is what we thought, and just really, just seeing what the response would be. And we've been kind of overwhelmed actually by the response and how quickly actually people have found the show, because we didn't have an advertising budget. We just put it out there on YouTube ourselves and, told our Kickstarter fans and the people who worked on the show and posted it on our social media. But since then, that was less than 2 weeks ago, our YouTube channel now has over 80,000 views, and we're getting a new subscriber for the show like once every 10 minutes, roughly.
That's excellent.
It's kind of, it's really remarkable. And I realized too, they have these analytics where you can look on YouTube and see where these hits are coming from. And I realized over the weekend that almost like 1,000 people have shared our link. And that's, I think, the key to the success of the pilot, is that people are watching it, they really love it, and then they're just like sharing it with their friends and saying like, oh, you should check that out. You should check this out. And I feel, that's sort of really growing the number of people seeing it really quickly. So it's good for us. And it's also, good because we're definitely getting some attention from industry people and from private investors. We've talked to some private investors in the last few days, and also to a production company as well. So we'll see, where it all lands, but we have scripted 6 episodes for the first season, and we want to try to start production on the next episode this fall. So hopefully we'll have more soon. The cast is ready and waiting.
That's great. You've got 6 episodes written. I was going to ask kind of how much you had written, and is there anything you can maybe tease to us a little bit on where things may go in those 6 episodes?
I guess people get older. No, I don't know. There's a lot that happens. I can tell you like a little bit about the structure of the show, which we, wanted to be sort of an episodic series, in that each episode is meant as sort of a standalone story that's about one of the major characters in the show, so that each character of this group of 5 kind of has their own episode where they're sort of the focus, and other people are definitely in it, but it's, each character kind of has their own story throughout the season. Because I like that idea of just really, kind of creating like a little short film each time. And so the running times of episodes, range from like 12 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on the story that we want to tell. And so that to me was exciting in doing a digital show, and that you have that flexibility to make the episodes as long, essentially as they need to be. So I will say there's some love and sex and a lot of back pain coming up too. So it's all in there.
A lot of back pain.
As the theme song promises. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. That's certainly one of the things you get when you get older, for sure. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
And
that was inspired by definitely real events.
I like what you're saying about each character getting their own show, because that seems like a great thing to do for a season 1, so that if you get to a 2, now we've had these nice stories about everybody to bridge into the next season. So we've had this great introduction, and flexible run times I think are great too for the creators. I've seen, shows on cable in particular. FX seems to have no real run time for some of its shows, because I've seen episodes of American Crime Story and even of Pose that can be 63 minutes, or they might be an hour and 22 minutes. It's like, it's getting looser out there for some of the cable channels.
We talked to somebody, a more traditional production company last week, and they were like, oh, well, would you do this as like a half-hour show, for TV, essentially, like for cable or something somewhere? And, we were like, sure. I mean, it could definitely be that too, I think the key thing is that we, have this kind of idea, this general idea about what's it like to be in your 40s and be gay, and looking at that through, comedy. And then we have these, 5 great guys who are all really interesting characters. And I think that's one of the unifying comments we've gotten from people about the show is everybody just wants to know more about these guys. You kind of get little tidbits about them in the opening. You get a little bit more about Luis, I think, than everyone else, just because it's his birthday. But yeah, and we really kind of do deeper dives into everyone's characters in these episodes that are part of season 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fingers crossed you get to series, because definitely want to see much more.
Yeah, yeah.
Looking at your broader career as a creator, you've tackled so many different genres of stories. You've certainly got the comedic right now with West 40s, but then, you swing way dramatic with something like WTC View, which for folks who don't know is a story that takes place the day before 9/11 and then tracks out some months after that. Do you have a favorite genre that you tend to work in, or is it all about just what's striking you in a moment?
I think I lean a little, towards comedy, as like a genre that I, enjoy working in. I think, it's just always been something I've been interested in. And I remember, like when I was in film school at NYU, the films that I did were, meant to be sort of funny and, were comedies. And at film school, they definitely were much more interested in very serious art kind of films. So I always felt like I was going a little against the indie filmmaker grain. But, for me, I like making people laugh, and I have been told that, the stuff I write is very funny. So I think that's always been like a little bit of a default for me. And I really enjoy that. I think with WTC View, it was definitely an unusual project, in general, but definitely for me. But, even in that story, I felt what I wanted to do was have humor in that story too, because I felt it was realistic in depicting how people were talking in those weeks, those kind of strange days after 9/11, days and weeks where, people really used humor as a way to kind of cope with the insanity that was going on around us if you lived in Lower Manhattan. So I think I like that the way that comedy, isn't just to make someone laugh, but it's a way people deal with tragedy. You can also kind of deal a sly political message sometimes too into comedies, and I like that. I sort of, with my film I Think I Do, which was about a gay couple at a straight couple's wedding, talking about getting married themselves. There was kind of like a sly bit of inserting that political story into the comedy and doing it through humor, at a time when that movie was made. It was 1998, so gay marriage was still quite a few years away and considered somewhat radical, I think. So yeah, I think I like using humor because you can sometimes address serious subjects and make some interesting commentary too.
For sure. We actually recently watched I Think I Do over again, because it had been quite some time, and love the humor in it, and especially for that time, as you mentioned, kind of sliding in that political message then too, because we were still, what was it, like almost near 20 years from marriage equality at that point.
Yeah, it was still quite a ways off. There was definitely, and I remember like people reading that script and when it was in the script stage, and definitely getting comments from people like, well, you treat this like it's not a big deal that these guys are getting married. I'm like, well, it isn't. I mean, that's the whole point. Like, why should it be, And that's sort of part of the comedy in that too. But there's also like a subtle, message there as well. And I really love comedies that have that, Like I think one of my idols as a filmmaker and a writer is Billy Wilder and the movies that he made, because I feel like his comedy is hilarious, but there's definitely always something else happening underneath the jokes, where, you know, either he's commenting on the human condition or, you know, on political subjects. I mean, he made a comedy about, you know, World War II, and made a number of comedies about World War II. And it's like, at a time when, you know, that subject was probably not considered very funny in the early 1950s, but he did it, you know, brilliantly, and those movies still hold up today. So he's definitely one of my favorites.
Such an excellent choice. Yeah, I can kind of see, yeah, why you would be so drawn to that, given and his diversity of work too, because he also worked in far more than comedy, of course.
Yeah, no, I mean, he definitely did a lot of different kinds of films in his career, and some of them, you know, are real classics, and others are, you know, a little bit more experimental, like Ace in the Hole, which is you know, a very, very interesting and sort of dark movie. So yeah, I like that, and I like to have in my own work sort of a broad range of topics and subjects and different volumes of comedy, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Turning it up all the way to 11, or, you know, a little bit more subtle in a movie like WTC View.
Now, besides genre hopping, essentially, you also write across various formats between books and stage and screen, and in some cases even adapting your work from one form to the other. This is kind of another question along the same one with the genre. Is there a place that you like to create the most, or do you think about what you're trying to say and then the format that fits it?
I think it usually comes down to, yeah, I think I try to decide, you know, early on before I start something, like, well, what's the best medium for something like this? Like with WTC View, I just remember thinking about that. And when I first started thinking about it, I just felt like, oh, there's no way this could be a movie. It would just be really hard as a film. I saw it as a very, you know, kind of intimate drama. It's all really set in one location. Most of it is actually sort of set in one room in the play. We changed that a little bit for the film, but yeah, I feel like I try to decide that early in the process of something starting. But, you know, oftentimes, you know, things go from one genre to the next. The book that I did, A Really Nice Prom Mess, the first novel that I did, that actually started out as a feature film. I didn't write the script, but I had written a treatment around the time of WTC View, or actually a little bit before WTC View. Before I Think I Do. And I had done a treatment for that story about a gay guy who kind of goes to the prom on a secret double date. And I remember talking and, you know, with producers and trying to shop this concept around. And everybody was just like, well, you know, nobody will make a movie with a gay teenage lead. It's just not going to happen in, you know, the mid 90s, which was a true statement, unfortunately. So I kind of put that project in a drawer. And then when I got the opportunity to do these young adult books for Simon & Schuster, they asked me to, you know, pitch them some ideas, and I pitched that, and they loved it. And then the idea went from being a screenplay to a novel. So and I'd love to make that movie eventually. Now that you can have a gay teenage lead in a movie, I think that's time for that movie to get made. So
absolutely, let Love Simon pave your way on that one.
Yeah, I enjoyed Love Simon. I thought it was really sweet. So A Really Nice Prom Mess is like a little edgier than Love Simon, but hopefully, you know, there might be some latitude now that that movie has sort of paved the way, definitely. So yeah, I mean, you know, I try to kind of pick something before I start, but oftentimes things, you know, will go from one genre to the next.
Mm-hmm. Is there something in the realm that you've been looking at, either with genre or a writing style, that you haven't tackled that might be on your bucket list?
Well, I've always been told like I should be writing a Broadway musical. It's something I've never like seriously thought about, but I keep hearing this from other people, and I do love going to see Broadway shows. I just saw the Go-Go's musical last night, Head Over Heels, and I would love to write a Broadway show. I mean, I have no clue what that would be, but I definitely would love to try to do something like that, because I really love that genre. And I mean, I don't write music, though I did, come up with the lyrics for our theme song on West 40s. But I would have to find, obviously, somebody who's a very talented songwriter. But yeah, I think doing a big musical would be a lot of fun, definitely.
That sounds awesome. As a major musical fan myself, it's like, anytime I can go see a good musical, I'm very down with that. If anybody ever wants to translate my work into a musical, I'm very into that, because that won't be me doing it.
Yeah.
But I say,
well, and I think
go forth and be a book writer and a lyric writer, and let somebody else figure out the musical part.
Yeah. No, and I think, I know friends of mine who have who've done it and done brilliant work in that realm. My good friend David Zelnick and his brother Joe did a musical called Yank, which is about gay servicemen in World War II. And it's just such an amazing show. And they've had productions around the U.S., and they've had productions in Brazil and in London. And hopefully it'll make it to Broadway eventually.
I hope so. It so deserves to be there. We saw that at its off-Broadway, one of the off-Broadway incarnations, and it was stunning.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, that was like, I've known David forever, and so I've followed the different productions of that show. I've lost count of how many times I've seen it, but I just love that show and what they did with it. So yeah, I would like to do it, but I do know, I think my one reservation about a Broadway show is I know it's incredibly hard. I would say it's probably one of the most difficult genres to write in, because it's tough to get that right. When people do, it's brilliant. But it's really tough to make that work. But I'd be willing to give it a shot.
I would definitely come to see it, because I'd like to see what you would create with that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun too,
Now, you've created LGBTQ plus stories for many years now. How do you feel that the landscape of getting that content into the world has evolved over that time?
Well, it's been remarkable how much it's evolved. I remember when I was in film school and I was doing my short film Pool Days, which ended up as part of the Boys Life series, that I was told, if you make this film, you're not going to have a career in filmmaking. Like, nobody's making these sort of movies. And that was 1993. And that was a true statement. Nobody was making those movies. But that's certainly changed in the, 20, almost 30 years, I guess, since then. That the, genre LGBT storytelling in film, and especially in TV, it's just blossomed, and I think it's incredible. I think the range of material is fantastic. I love that, there's shows that people hate and there's shows that people love, and I think that's great too. I think there should be a wide range. One Piece is not representing the entire LGBT community, because how could it? So I think now you see shows that are out there like Pose, which just, is out now on FX, taking a look at like the trans community and the ballroom scene. And, I think that's an incredible show. Yeah, there's just so much out there these days. And I just saw this show that Hugh Grant did. I think it was like a BBC. Oh, no, it was for Amazon, called A Very British Scandal. Have you seen this show?
Yeah, we just watched
Have
it
heard
a couple
about
weeks
it?
ago, actually, and reviewed it.
So I mean, I thought that was incredible. And again, I love that that show, is looking at LGBT issues. But I mean, that politician is certainly, no angel for sure. So I like that there can be, gay characters now that are not perfect. They're human, and I think that to me is the biggest sign of progress. Is that the characters in LGBT stories these days don't have to represent the entire community. They can be incredibly flawed. They can be interesting. They can be real. And I think that's, for us, what really is behind West 40s. We just wanted to show real guys in their 40s and what that's like. And they're not all going to be, perfect role models for sure, but they are going to be real. And I think, because of the genre we're working in, they're going to be really funny too. So I just love that there's that choice these days of a lot to see.
Are there stories, in your opinion, that desperately need to be told that are still kind of tucked away?
Well, I would definitely, make an argument for our West 40s as one of those, because I feel like, there's a lot of content out there now, especially online, that's aimed and made for millennials. But I feel like this age group, kind of disappears when you look at movies and TV shows about LGBT people. And, that's part of, our desire in this show, because we really felt that this age group was not being represented at all. Like, it just sort of like disappeared off the map in a way, So I feel like there should be more stories about this, about, guys in their 40s, guys in their 50s. There's another show being developed called Silver Foxes, which is about senior citizens who are gays and lesbians, from one of the writers of Golden Girls. So I would like to see more stories about, gay men and lesbians and trans people aging, because I feel like, that's a subject people can really relate to. And I know from the comments that we've gotten about this show, it's like one of the recurring comments is people are like, thank you for making this, because I can, it's so nice to see my experience, out there. So I feel like that's definitely, an area where I'd like to see a lot more stories, not just ours. Of course, I want to see many seasons of ours, but there's certainly many approaches you can take to this this topic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, pivoting again to one of your more early things, we loved your two young adult novels. Will and I both did. Any more novels in your future somewhere?
I would love to write another novel. I definitely have some ideas that are kind of like in a drawer somewhere. Well, I actually know where, it's sitting right across from me here at my desk. But novels take a long time to write. That is for sure. And, it's a very intensive process. And lately, because of West 40s and also because of two other TV projects I'm developing, I just haven't had much time to think about the literary fictional world. So I would love to do some more novels, but I don't know how imminent they will be. But soon, maybe.
It's good to know that they're in the offing potentially.
Projects. Yeah. Yeah, and especially I really loved working in the young adult genre too, because I just felt it's a genre that's open to writers having a lot of fun, without too much seriousness. I mean, there's definitely serious young adult novels, but I feel like I really enjoyed it because you just had a lot of freedom to have fun as a writer,
Mm-hmm.
and that I enjoyed.
Now, of course, trying to get West 40s to series is critical in the upcoming weeks and months. What other projects, you just alluded to 2 TV projects, what else might be coming up that you can talk to us about in the future?
I'm working on 2 projects. One actually with David Zelnick from Yank, which is a series. I don't know how much I can say about it right now, but it's I would say it's sort of a romantic comedy type series. And then the other project I'm working on is something of my own, which is a limited series that's based on a true story from the 20th century. I can say that much.
And that's a broad landscape you have to work there.
Yes. But it's definitely a very racy LGBT story from the 20th century. But hopefully there'll be more news about that project soon.
Excellent. Very exciting to hear that there's good stuff coming.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting year with West 40s and these other 2 projects. So yeah, hopefully I'll definitely have some more news on these soon.
Excellent. What's the best way for folks to keep up with you, with what you're working on and what's coming out?
Well, for West 40s, definitely subscribing to our YouTube channel, or you can also subscribe to our email list, which is through our website, which is west40s.com or west40s.tv. And then for myself, I have a website too, which is briansloan.com. And you can just kind of see, it has links to all the other films I've done and the books. And on Twitter and Instagram, I am Hi-Fi Brian, as in a hi-fi stereo.
Nice. I like that name. That's cool. We will.
It's an old nickname from when I was in middle school, which sort of stuck.
There are worse ones to have. So and actually, I think that one's pretty good. So.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was definitely a fun nickname.
So we will link up to all of that stuff in our show notes so people can find West 40s and those various other ways to keep up with you. Brian, thank you so much for hanging out with us and telling us about all this good stuff. Much appreciated. Oh,
sure. It was really great to talk to you about all the excitement, especially on West 40s. And we're really thrilled about how it's been received and hope to have more episodes soon.